What is it about the shape of a coupe that puts shivers up the spines of any decent car-loving red-blooded male? This week we caress the curves of the sexy Fiat Coupe, the desirable Volvo C70, and the sleek 406 Coupe. But first, who'd have thought that Ford would get a stunning coupe out of the Mondeo?
Think of that little blue oval on the front of a car, and a couple of years ago we would have immediately thought of dull and adventurous cars that had all the driving excitement of a wet weekend and the style statement of a Bri nylon shirt.
Well, Fords may not have been that exciting, but they were still some of the best sellers around. The Ford Escort is one of the top 3 best-selling cars of all time. But I'm afraid that had little to do with their wonderful attributes. More to do with the fact that if you put people in an ice cream parlour filled with every flavour imaginable, from Caribbean Crush to Death by Chocolate to Rocky Road, most of them would still plump for dull, plain, good old-fashioned vanilla. Not exactly an inspired choice, but at least you know what you're getting.
Now, the top brass at Ford were well aware of their image, or should that be lack of one? And even if they did make their rivals weep when it came to the number of cars driven out of the showrooms, they decided to try and make our roads a prettier and more exciting place to be. Enter one crack design team and a new funky look called New Edge.
New Edge design is a new way of thinking for Ford, and we are flowing the concept into most of our new models over the next few years. If you take the cues from Car and from Puma, we flowed these cues into Cougar and extended it a little bit further.
Yes, from those high-tech design studios came cars that really wouldn't look out of place in the window of Harvey Nicks. First of all came the curvy car. Apart from looking so radically different to anything else on the road, it had a name that confused the hell out of everybody. It was the type of cute car that made its owners wave to each other, as they were obviously part of some new, very trendy club. The car really hit the mark and was quickly followed by the car that made driving enthusiasts everywhere drool and dribble at the thought of getting their hands on one. Ford's Puma was an instant hit. It looks amazing, is rewarding to drive, has bags of character, and doesn't make a huge dent in your bank balance. Car buyers simply can't get enough of them, and the Puma was the car that marked Ford's transition from frumpy to fantastic. And it left everyone wondering just what would come next. Well, here it is. Make way in the jungle for the latest big cat from Ford, the Cougar. When the concept was first unveiled, it produced gasps of delight. No one really believed that the actual car could be quite as stunning. But it is.
This coupe is unmistakably big brother to the Puma. But at every turn, it's bolder, it's more exaggerated, it's simply more desirable. And where the car was unmistakably curvy, the Cougar is packed with angles. Its lines are strong, bold, and they're razor sharp. Inside is a very different story. All the angles have disappeared, replaced instead by flowing lines, circles, and swooping curves. Now, the interior may not be quite as stylish as that of the Puma, but the Cougar is a very different car aimed at a different kind of driver. And there are still plenty of nice touches. Everything is well laid out, just where you want it to be. The driving position seems comfortable. And there's a couple of Cougar's heads around, just to remind you what car you're in. And for versatility, you can't beat the good old hatchback. And what an enormous load area. For once, you don't have to sacrifice space and versatility just to be able to make something of a style statement.
And what a style statement it makes. This feast for the eyes puts the work of some of Italy's celebrated design studios to shame. The cat's eyes light up, they glare out at you. It simply doesn't have a bad angle, and its presence on the road is undeniable.
The surprise with the stylish Cougar is that it shares so much with that good old repmobile, the Ford Mondeo. They may well be brothers, but there's no prizes for guessing which one of them got the short straw. One thing you can't deny is that the Cougar's handling is that of a true sporting car.
The machined precision look, the taut surfaces and intersecting planes that finish in some of the detailed edges around the headlamps, for example, the V on the bonnet, the triangle around the mirror area. and culminating at the rear in very triangular, sharp featured tail lamps and high-mounted stop lamp.
The 2-litre has a top speed of 130 miles per hour, while the V6 will take you to 137 and will get you from 0 to 60 in around 8 seconds. Not quite as impressive as some of its competition, but Ford are keen to point out that the Cougar isn't a supercharged sports car.
Well, we had a huge advantage in using Mondeo as our core platform. The performance of the car dynamically on the road and in a straight line was just right as a basis for this type of sporty coupe, and it allowed us to use the underpinnings of the car, the basic chassis components and the platform floor, and yet change everything on the upper part of the car, everything that the driver or people in the street can actually see, and in particular the driver can touch and feel, has been changed, and yet it's allowed us to keep the underpinning platform Mondeo.
Ford have done it again. With Cougar, they've managed to prove that they really are back on form. Producing cars for those of us who want something a little bit different from life. Those of us who, if faced with the choice, would pick death by chocolate over boring old vanilla any day of the week.
With the release of every new major motor car comes a crop of PRs and willing journalists who are happy to call it a classic, whatever it is. History eventually proves them right or wrong, but in the meantime we're left with this borrowed aura around most of the cars that we consider desirable. One of the privileges of having your own book is that you have space. And in this year I've managed to take a look at 12 of what we call dream cars and see if they perhaps really are just borrowing from their past or have a place in future motoring history. There are MGs, there are Lotuses, there are BMWs, there are Alphas. There are any number of them which appear to be classics. And over 20,000 words, I've taken a look, and there are disappointments. The Mercedes SLK, for instance, was something of a disappointment with its slab-sided styling and uncomfortable seats and a gearbox that's easily confused under power. It's really half a saloon. The MGF, although a desirable car, really feels unfinished, and many journalists have called it a brick, a builder's brick from behind. There are surprises. There are some beautiful things like the 355 Ferrari that is almost flawless, the Porsche Boxster, which really and truly is without a parallel for handling. But above all else, there was one big surprise. It just shows that badges aren't everything. This is the stunningly beautiful Fiat. No one expected a car of this calibre from a company that really in the past has been known for rust buckets, for runabout cars that fell apart. They don't even have a real lineage. They put Ferrari engines in briefly for a period at the Dino, but you have to look back to the 50s and an extraordinary car they called simply a V8, which was a lightweight car with a V8 engine naturally, and just 114 were built. They didn't quite know what to do with it. If calling a car simply a V8 in the 50s was an unromantic kind of notion, Fiat haven't really changed too much now, because although this car is a real stunner, it doesn't call it anything romantic now. It is simply a Fiat Coupe 20-valve turbo. Fortunately, it drives a whole lot better than it reads. The delights aren't just on the outside of this car. The cockpit is pure pleasure. Pininfarina themselves designed the interior, and the colour coding across the dash is reminiscent of the old MGAs and Alphas, and indeed they proudly carry their name on the colour here. The controls are all very, very straightforward. There's none of these curves and high-fashioned areas where they're no use to you, they're just pretty. This is functional and it gets on with it, and so does the engine. This is the turbocharged version, which delivers 220 brake horse. That actually gives you an enormous power band. The thing about the turbo with Fiat is they've managed to create one that develops its power low down, so that the minimum amount of turbo lag and the maximum amount of power when you need it, when you're accelerating. In fact, driving it is twofold. You can drive it like a madman and it will go in exactly that manner, or if you keep it in a slightly higher gear than you'd expect to, the turbo will always catch up with you, so that you can drive it in a docile manner, and then when you put your foot down, it picks up and responds. It's a very easy way of driving, particularly on motorways. But when you actually want pleasure, you only have to take it down a couple of cogs, and the performance we found when we were testing the 12 cars was actually faster to 60 than a Porsche Boxster, than the Mercedes SLK, than the Aston Martin DB7. It is a real flyer. Comparing this car with some of the giants in the industry like Aston Martin and Jaguar and BMW seems a contradiction in terms, but in fact the interior of this car will take more luggage and will more easily take the occasional passengers in the back than, say, the DB7, which is 4 times its value. Somehow Pininfarina's years of experience building cars for Ferrari has carried across to Fiat. It is indeed Pininfarina themselves, not Fiat, who build this car. It isn't actually a Fiat production. It's a Fiat design in conjunction with Pininfarina, and these gorgeous cars are actually built at that glamorous designers. However beautiful this car is, and it is beautiful, the real triumph is in the performance. 45 in first, the speed limit on the motorway in second, 100 in third, 135 in fourth, 155 if you're lucky in top. That's an astonishing figure, particularly from a Fiat. The triumph is reflected in the fact even What Car magazine has voted this coupe 2 years in a row Coupe of the Year.
After the break, nothing could be further from the slab side of the States, the Volvo C70.
There are lots of good reasons to drive a Volvo. Sensible reasons, like safety, comfort and reliability. But looks, forget it. You buy a Volvo in spite of, and not because of its looks. Don't you? Well, not anymore. Say hello to the C70 Coupe, a sexy Volvo with swoopy lines. A car that's billed as the Volvo you want, not the Volvo you need.
It's fair to say that this is the first new, truly desirable Volvo in over 20 years. Its designer, Peter Aubrey, was given a blank sheet of paper to design the kind of car that he'd like to cruise in.
It's a coupe to rival the best of the bunch, a car with sex appeal, one with the style you'd expect from something that claims to be a genuine Gran Turismo.
The Gran Turismo had its heyday in the 1950s. It was a car to carry you and your luggage to your villa in the south of France, in comfort, style and elegance. A car that made the journey every bit as enjoyable as the arrival. So, can the C70 live up to that reputation? Or will it just leave you longing for the end of the road?
Costing just over £30,000 in its basic form, the full name is the C70 T5. And the T in the 5 lets you know that there's something quite special underneath the bonnet. This 2.3-litre 250 brake horsepower engine first appeared in the 850 T5, where it got a reputation for amazing performance, and there's no reason why it won't be just as hot in this incarnation.
As soon as you get in and turn the engine over, you're greeted by a rich, throaty welcome. You can get from 0 to 60 in around 7 seconds, and believe me, you'll have no problems overtaking in the C70, not with a top speed of 155 miles per hour. Now that's an awful lot of power for a front-wheel drive car to handle, but thanks to a collaboration between Volvo and the Formula One engineers TWR and their work on the chassis, the C70 has no problems in handling it all. It may be sporty, but the ride doesn't feel too hard. It holds the road beautifully and gives you plenty of grip through the bends. The steering feels taut and it feels direct. All in all, it's a driving experience to make you smile.
On the road, the C70 is definitely a real head-turner. It may not be the prettiest of coupes, but the muscular swooping lines are very attractive. It's fresh and sharp, and it's still a Volvo.
And the inside also reflects that heritage. The layout in here is almost identical to that of the S and the V70. It isn't flash and it certainly isn't trendy. What it is simple, well laid out, and it has a quality feeling. It feels rather expensive. The wooden dash trim is part of a £5,000 GT pack which is fitted to this vehicle, and that's crammed full of all manner of goodies, things like electric heated seats, climate control and even an onboard computer. And if you were to head off on your grand tour of Europe in the C70, you'd have plenty of room. There's enough space in here to seat 4 adults comfortably. There's plenty of head and leg room. And there's lots of space in the back for all the luggage. The backseat passengers may not relish the thought of spending hundreds of miles sat in the back of here, but it's far more comfortable than most in its class.
Volvo have gone all out to make you feel emotional about the C70. It's certainly the most desirable Volvo we've seen in a long, long time. It's not the most powerful coupe on offer, nor is it the most graceful, but it is the kind of car that you'd be very happy to live with. It's enjoyable to drive, you feel relaxed behind the wheel, and you travel in comfort. Yep, I reckon the C70 can genuinely stake its claim as a real Gran Turismo, and not just a saloon posing in a new suit of clothes.
18 months ago, Peugeot gave us this, the 406, their mid-range family saloon. It was an instant success with the press, the buying public, and more importantly, the fleet buyers. Now, based on that success, Peugeot are introducing this, the new 406 Coupe, designed and built by Pininfarina. Its looks are drop-dead gorgeous. Let's see what its performance is like. Earlier, I spoke to Todd Evans from Peugeot for the official Peugeot view of the car.
The 406 Coupe has got a number of worthy competitors in the marketplace. The key volume models, both the Ford Probe and the Calibra, are both aging, so I think that we can discount those. I think the 406 Coupe is going to stand up very well against more expensive models simply because it's such a fabulous expression of style, and that's what people are buying into, and that's why it's going to be successful. The gadgets, as far as the 406 Coupe are concerned, are fabulous, and the two that I suppose I would pick out, because people seem to express terrific interest in them, is first of all, when you open the door window pops down about half an inch, and when you close it, it pops up again automatically to create a wonderful seal because it's a frameless door. And the second point, when you open the door and you want to let rear passengers into the car, you flick the squab forward and the whole seat slides on a little electric motor. Wonderful to watch. When you flick it back, it slides back again. You've got rain-sensitive windscreen wipers and other things, but those two, I think, are the things that the gimmick lovers will really enjoy. Our relationship with Pininfarina goes back around 46 years now, and we've turned to them as a partner when we want something distinctive and different off our mainline design. If you're a designer and you've developed the 406, you think that's a perfect car. To turn to that same team and say, now do a coupe off it, you don't get that natural feel for doing a completely different expression of the car than you would if you go to a different design house. Pininfarina have been wonderful for us, and this 406 Coupe is the very best expression of their work.
Well, I've seen a fair amount of Warwickshire country lanes this afternoon, and I must say, on a day as sweltering as this, I was very glad to have the air conditioning. While everyone else was sweltering, I was cool as ice in there. Did I like the car? Well, yes, I did actually. It's not a rocket ship, but it's certainly no sluggard. It's very nicely appointed inside and it handles really well. The engine's really responsive, and all in all, it gives a very good feel to it. There are a few items I'd like to show you inside. Some are, for instance, the seats. Look at this. Isn't that nice? And when you're in, so what don't I like? Well, the only thing I really don't like is this immobiliser pad. Every time you get in the car and turn the engine on, you have to punch in your number on the pad before the thing will start. This 406 from Peugeot is the latest addition to the coupe market, a growing marketplace. It'll be interesting to see how the market takes to it, but I for one like it and give it full marks.